Hello students, this is Vidya from English Magis, your virtual English mentor and guide. Welcome to today's lesson Memories of Childhood by Zit Kalasa and Bama, Chapter 8 from CBSE English Core Book, Vistas. This chapter presents two autobiographical episodes from the lives of two women from marginalized communities who look back on their childhood and reflect on their relationship with the mainstream culture. The first account is by an American Indian woman born in the late 19th century. The second is by a contemporary Tamil Dalit writer. First, we will study part 1, The Cutting of My Long Hair. Let's begin the part by knowing a little about its author and the theme. Zit Kalasa, born Gertrude Simmons Bonin, was a Native American writer, educator, and activist from the Yankton Sioux tribe. She advocated for indigenous rights, highlighting the struggles of Native Americans through her autobiographical works. Her poignant stories expose the cultural oppression faced by Native children in boarding schools, making her a significant voice in American literature. The story highlights the forced assimilation of Native American children into white culture, stripping them of their heritage and identity. Zit Kalasa's narrative focuses on the painful event of having her long hair cut, symbolizing the loss of her cultural identity and personal autonomy. Now we will begin the paragraph-wise explanation of the first part of the chapter. Before we do so, I recommend you to pause and read text on each slide before listening to its explanation. This approach will deepen your understanding as we go through our detailed analysis. Let us begin the explanation now. In the beginning scene, Zit Kalasa describes her first day at the boarding school. It was extremely cold, with snow on the ground and bare trees. A loud bell rang for breakfast, and the noise hurt her sensitive ears. The clattering of shoes and the constant noise made her feel trapped. Despite her inner struggle for freedom, she felt helpless and unable to escape her situation. In the second scene, a woman with white hair led Zit Kalasa and other girls into the dining room. The girls, dressed in stiff shoes and tight clothes, were lined up and marched in. Zit Kalasa, wearing soft moccasins, felt uncomfortable and exposed without her blanket. She noticed how the other Indian girls seemed indifferent to their attire. As they entered, the boys came in through another door, highlighting the strict and unfamiliar routines of the school. In the third scene, Zit Kalasa watched for the three boys from her group, who looked as uneasy as she felt. A small bell rang, signaling the students to pull out their chairs. Assuming they were to sit, Zit Kalasa sat down, only to realize she was the only one seated. As she began to stand up, a second bell rang, indicating it was now time to sit. In this scene, the author describes, everyone finally sat down, and Zit Kalasa had to awkwardly get back into her chair. A man began speaking, and she looked up, but everyone else kept their heads down. She noticed a woman staring at her, making her feel nervous. When the third bell rang, everyone started eating. Zit Kalasa, afraid and confused, began to cry instead of eating. In this scene, the author illustrates the hardest part of the day came later. Zit Kalasa's friend, Judwin, warned her that their long hair would be cut. In their culture, only captured warriors or mourners had short hair. Judwin said they had to submit because the authorities were strong. Zit Kalasa, however, decided to resist this cultural violation and refused to give in. In these lines, the author explains, determined not to submit, Zit Kalasa looked for a chance to escape. She sneaked away and found a large, dimly lit room. Hiding under a bed, she hoped to avoid being found. She felt safe in her hiding place, but soon heard footsteps and voices searching for her. Despite her fear, she remained silent, hoping to avoid detection. In this section, the author describes, from her hiding spot, Zit Kalasa heard her name being called. People were searching for her, including her friend Judwin. The room was searched thoroughly, and someone finally found her under the bed. She resisted fiercely, but was dragged out and taken downstairs. Despite her efforts to fight back, she was tied to a chair. In the last scene of part 1, the author explains Zit Kalasa cried out as she felt the cold scissors cut her hair. She felt a deep sense of loss and humiliation. Since being taken from her mother, she had endured many indignities, but losing her hair was the worst. She felt dehumanized and alone, longing for the comfort and understanding of her mother, but received none in this harsh environment. With this, the first part ends. Here is the list of literary devices used in it. Pause the video and go through it. Now we will begin the second part, We Too Are Human Beings by Bhama. Before we begin its explanation, let's know its author and theme briefly. Bhama, born as Faustina Mary Fatima Rani in 1958, is a renowned Indian Tamil Dalit feminist writer. Her works, including Kalukku, reflect her experiences with caste-based discrimination and social injustice. Through her powerful narratives, she brings attention to the plight of Dalits in India, advocating for social equality and empowerment through education. In the second part, Bhama describes her experiences with caste discrimination in India. She vividly portrays the everyday indignities faced by her community. The narrative culminates in her realization of the importance of education as a means to overcome social barriers and attain dignity and respect. In the beginning section, the author explains when Bhama was in the third class, she hadn't heard about untouchability, but she had felt its effects. One day, while walking home from school, she took her time, enjoying the sights and activities in the streets. Though the walk could be done in 10 minutes, it often took her much longer because she was fascinated by the bustling life around her. In this scene, the author describes Bhama was captivated by the lively scenes in the streets. She saw a performing monkey, a snake charmer, a cyclist riding non-stop for days, spinning wheels, and various stalls. She enjoyed watching the activities at the temple, the street vendors selling food, and the hunter gypsies with their wild animals. These fascinating sights always slowed her journey home. In these sentences, the author describes Bhama found it hard to keep moving as each new sight captivated her. Sometimes, political parties set up stages to give speeches. Other times, there were street plays, puppet shows, or performances debunking magic tricks. There was always some form of entertainment in the streets, making it difficult for her to continue on her way home. In this section, the author explains even without special events, the bazaar was full of interesting sights. Bhama watched waiters skillfully cooling coffee, people chopping onions, and an almond tree with its fruit. These everyday activities were so engaging that they often stopped her in her tracks, adding to the time it took her to get home. In this scene, the author explains depending on the season, different fruits and snacks were sold on the streets. Bhama saw vendors selling mangoes, cucumbers, sugarcane, sweet potatoes, and more. She loved seeing the variety of foods, including fried snacks, sweets, and icy treats, which added to the vibrant atmosphere of her walk home. Here the author describes one day, while enjoying the sights, Bhama reached her street and saw a threshing floor where people were working hard. The landlord watched them while sitting comfortably. Bhama stopped to watch the workers and the animals treading the grain. The lively scene caught her attention, making her pause before continuing towards home. Here the author explains Bhama saw an elder from her street walking in a funny manner, holding a small packet by its string. The packet seemed to contain oily snacks like vadai or bhaji. She wondered why he carried it like that, thinking it might fall apart. This sight made her laugh, but it also revealed the social norms and practices related to untouchability in her community. The elder went to the landlord, bowed, and offered him the packet of vadais, holding it carefully by the string. The landlord ate the vadais, and Bhama, finding it funny, went home and told her brother about it. She laughed at the sight of a grown man carrying the packet in such a peculiar way. In this scene, the author explains Bhama's brother, Anna, didn't find it funny. He explained that the elder carried the packet by its string because they were considered untouchable by the upper castes. Touching the packet directly would be seen as polluting the landlord. Anna's explanation made Bhama realize the seriousness of the situation. In this scene, the author explains Bhama felt sad and angry after learning the truth. She couldn't understand why they were considered untouchable, especially when the vadais were wrapped in layers of banana leaf and paper. The sight of the elder, a respected figure in their community, serving the landlord so humbly made Bhama feel furious and humiliated. Bama questioned why the upper caste people considered themselves superior just because they had some wealth. She believed that her people, being human too, should not run errands for the upper castes. Instead, they should work in the fields, earn their wages, and maintain their dignity without performing menial tasks for the landlords. Bama's brother, Anna, who was studying at a university, shared an incident with her. While walking home one day, a landlord's man questioned him about his name and street to identify his caste. This experience highlighted how deeply caste discrimination was ingrained in their society, affecting even those who pursued education. In the last scene, the author explains Anna advised Bama to study hard to overcome the indignities they faced due to their caste. He believed that education and success would earn them respect and break the cycle of discrimination. Inspired by his words, Bama dedicated herself to her studies, eventually excelling in her class and gaining friends and recognition. With this, the second part ends. Here is the list of literary devices used in this part. Pause the video and go through it and stay tuned for more entertaining explanations of our upcoming lessons. Thank you for joining us. Kindly like and subscribe if you found the lesson helpful. See you in the next lesson.